yourself a cold one.
They strike 'em, huh?
And listen to Ross Tucker break down the top college prospects on another tasty edition of The College Draft.
Yeah, it's Daddy Soda time here on the College Draft Podcast, presented, of course, by DraftKings. The crown is yours, and this is a very, very exciting episode. You know why? We're moving onward and upward. Today starts the journey for the 2025 college football season, the 2026 NFL Draft. We are looking ahead. Now, if you missed anything we did over the last 8 weeks, go ahead, go back, review every draft choice for every team, every one of Emory's favorite undrafted free agents. Preseason games will be starting before you know it. They're like a month away. So what does that mean? That means you should absolutely get his draft guide, footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. It now becomes your preseason viewing guide. footballgameplan.com/2025 draft guide. But as a reminder, whether you listen to the podcast or you watch youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, you can now go back and check out any of the episodes where we broke down every pick from the 2025 NFL Draft. Today, however, we turn the page. Here's the plan. We'll do an episode for the Power 4 conferences, right? So today we'll do ACC, next week we'll do Big 10, then Big 12, then SEC. Then we'll do a Group of 5 episode. Then we'll probably do like a FCS, D2, D3, NAIA episode, getting you ready for the top prospects in college football this year. Then obviously once the season rolls around, we really get into the games, the prospects to watch in the games. But, you know, Emory's been pretty successful really across the board, whether it's the UFL, CFL, with his betting on these other leagues. So we'll look at his betting for college football as the season rolls around. Emory, of course, is the terrific Emory Hunt, who you should check out on social media at F-Ball Game Plan. He's got that terrific YouTube page, Football Game Plan, on YouTube. I'm just Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman. Check me out at Ross Tucker NFL on social media, at Ross Tucker Pod. I will be doing some college games again this year. Really looking forward to that. More NFL games again, but still getting a chance to do some college games, which I greatly, greatly enjoy. You know, I realized, Emory, before we even get into the ACC, who's got some exciting players to talk about. Man, Clemson looks like they're loaded. Clemson and Miami have some legit talent to get to. I did not ask you, even though the last couple weeks on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast I talked about it, I did not ask you about Shedeur Sanders, your QB1 in last year's draft. You know, there was a 2-week period there in early June where twice he got arrested for speeding tickets. I said this last week on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, I don't really understand the failure to appear thing. I didn't know you had to appear if you guys, the first speeding tickets. I'm not sure I quite understand that part of it, so I'll just move on from that. But I did want to get your thoughts on if you think this decision-making, however you would describe it, immaturity, whatever, if maybe, Emory, this is part of the reason why he fell on the draft, if teams had some inkling. Because I didn't really care that much about one, but then when it was like the second time, less than 2 weeks later, and he's going over 100 in a 60, and it's the second one, and that's the one where I was like, wait a minute, what's going on here now?
I mean, first, he didn't get arrested, so you know we don't want to put that out there, right? It was just like a traffic stop. It's impressive to me, Ross, like, because not only was this dude the number one, he was first in college football history in terms of accuracy by completion percentage. He's apparently the first dude in life history to get a speeding ticket. Like, I got to keep track of what we really care about, right? You know, is it the ball padding or is it the speeding ticket, right? Because we know how speeding tickets work. And yes, don't speed, slow down, especially at 100 miles an hour. I'm willing to bet this is on a highway, a stretch of highway. We've all got speeding tickets. We all get a little bit lead foot at times. I'm not saying to the point where we were going 40 miles over the limit, but some of these spots, man, especially it seems like in Ohio, this is where people get tickets, right? It's almost like driving to Maryland. I live in Jersey, right? And so we know how we drive on the turnpike and the parkway. So you just assume everybody's driving like this everywhere else on the turnpike and the parkway or the beltway. You get down to get down to Maryland, and you're like, man, why is everybody driving 50 miles an hour? And you zoom, zoom, zoom. You driving 70, which is normal up here in Jersey. And next thing you know, you get a ticket in the mail. You get a ticket in the mail, you're driving in D.C., you think, okay, well, nobody's on the road. I can kind of go a little bit above the speed limit, still under control, ticket. So all I'm saying is if people want affirmation, not confirmation. So whatever will confirm or affirm your priors about Shedeur Sanders, anything that happens will be made a big deal because we're talking about ball padding, and now we're talking about speeding tickets, and now we're talking about interviews and headphones, and I just can't wait for football to start. And I love how this is why Shiloh is the best big brother, because the clip came out over the weekend that he was, in Tampa. He was walking across the streets like, man, we got to be careful out here walking across the street, especially with Shedeur driving. That's the perfect big brother. You know what I'm saying? Never miss an opportunity to troll. So that's how I feel about it. It's much ado about nothing. We need NFL football back in the worst way possible.
Let's get into the quarterbacks for this year's draft. And the ACC actually has several of them that are at the forefront. Let's start with Cade Klubnik from Clemson, who's been starting for them the last couple years, really took the job from DJ Uiagalelei.
Yeah, and it's fascinating because he had a lot of hype when he first came in and took the job, and it was like, oh, this is the next one. And he just kind of played average ball. Even up until last season, he was playing average ball. And then the back half of the season and into the postseason, something just clicked, man. And you look at him versus Georgia versus how he looked against SMU in the ACC title game, and then how he looked against Texas in the postseason. You're like, whoa, the light has come on. He's a dual threat guy. Like, he could legitimately pick him up and put him down. He's confident in how he's making these decisions on the back end of the season. And so you hope he carries that over into this year. Kind of reminds me a lot of what we saw from Colt McCoy when he was at Texas, and how he, was someone that you really couldn't, get a good gauge on because of how athletic he was and how confident he was in some of the decisions he's able to make throwing the ball. So if Klubnik can build on what he did late last season and into the postseason and bring it into this year, this is someone that could really elevate his stock significantly, along with what you just mentioned earlier, that this team is loaded with pro prospects, and that kind of helps you be a good football team amongst other collegiate teams. Klubnik has a chance to really elevate his stock, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it always helps the Ohio State quarterbacks when all their receivers are first-round picks or whoever. You know what I mean? Like that helps quite a bit when you got that many NFL guys around you all over the place that are that good. I didn't even realize Clemson was loaded like this, especially on defense, which we will get to. What about at Miami's quarterback? Now, we talked about this when he transferred, but it's Carson Beck, who some people, you talk about this all the time, but some people thought a couple years ago when he had that really good year with Brock Bowers that he might go pro because he had such a really good year. And then last year in Georgia, banged up, wasn't as good, and now he transfers to Miami. Carson Beck, Emory.
This puts Carson Beck in a bad spot, in my opinion, because he had the hype coming into last season, and a lot of people say, oh, this is a clear-cut QB1, blah, blah. The same people that was like, this is a clear-cut QB1 were also the same people that was like, Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward, they're not even good quarterback prospects. It's about Carson Beck, easily. So take what they say as a grain of salt, because they're also trying to slide Carson Beck's name back in there. So you have that element, but then you also have the Carson Beck side of it where he's following the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward. And we saw what Cam Ward looked like at Miami. Now, granted, he had those receivers he was working with, and you hope that Miami will be better defensively this time around, because if they were better defensively last year, Miami would have been in the postseason. So you have to, if you're Carson Beck, you have to kind of shake what people thought about you last year and what we all saw at Georgia. And you also have to follow up the number 1 overall pick in Cam Ward. And people are expecting you to continue to play like what he put out there on the field. So this is a big year for Carson Beck. And, can he kind of elevate his game to where it looks at least passable, in terms of his ability to project as a pro player? I still feel like what you have already put out there on film is what you kind of are. So that's why I was high on Cam Ward when I saw him initially at Incarnate Word in Washington State. My opinion never really changed on Cam Ward. And so with, Carson Beck, even if Miami goes to the postseason, Beck's game is still Beck's game. I just think that he's kind of like a guy that, maybe a 3rd round type pick, if we're projecting him for the NFL.
Don't go anywhere. Got to pay some bills real quick. Gosh, I love Labatt Blue Light. I hope you guys do as well. It's by far the best tasting light beer. Tell me one that's better. And right now, if you go to rewards.labattusa.com, they're literally giving you merchandise just for doing what you should be doing anyway, which is buying and drinking Labatt Blue Light. This is a win, win, win. A lot of good things there. I mean, first of all, suppose he's getting $4 million from Miami. I think they paid Cam Ward like $2 million. I don't know that they're going to be happy with their return on investment if they're paying somebody double what they paid Cam Ward, because Carson Beck is not Cam Ward. On the one hand, they have like a really good O-line. They have a really good team around him, so that puts him in a good spot. But you're right. All Miami fans, every scout's going to compare whatever Beck does to what Ward did last year, which is good luck, obviously, because he was phenomenal. So there's pros and cons of that. I don't blame him for going there for $4 million. That's what I would do. $4 million,
Right.
To play college football, Miami for the year. Yeah, okay, I'll do that tomorrow. It'd be weird to explain to my wife and kids, but I'll go tomorrow to Miami to play football for $4 million this year. But I do think that you make a really good point there. The other guy I know you're a big fan of at quarterback in the ACC is Haynes King from Georgia Tech.
I don't know why many people are not talking about Haynes King. I mean, if we're talking about first team all grit, right? A guy that's a gamer, a guy that has the athleticism, a guy that has played tough situational football and has come out on top. I mean, I know it's the one mistake, but man, if he doesn't fumble the ball against Georgia, they beat Georgia. He was going toe to toe with the aforementioned Carson Beck. In every game I watched Georgia Tech play, I felt like Haynes King was just playing well above the X's and O's. I think this guy is the best quarterback in the ACC, in my opinion. In with regards to the pro prospects. Even we were talking about Klubnik, we're talking about Beck, we're talking about Kyron Drones. People forgot about him for Virginia Tech. Haynes King embodies what you want at that position. Someone that's not scared, someone that can pick up the cheap yards if he can, and he has the athleticism to house that thing if he wants to, and he's making all these tough throws, and he's doing all of that at Georgia Tech. He's not doing it at Miami or at Clemson. So I think Haynes King, to me, is the best quarterback in the ACC, based on how he plays, based on how he's not afraid of the moment. And I'm expecting some things out of Georgia Tech this year to really be that fly in the ointment like they were last year in the ACC.
Let's stick with Georgia Tech and go with their running back, Jamal Haynes. Emma, anytime you get a chance to break down running backs, I love it.
Yeah, because here's another one, a guy that just has the ability to really make the first defender miss. He has good burst and explosiveness. He has that big play capability, and another one that seems to really elevate his game when the moment called for it. We didn't see him shrink in these big game moments. So you have a excellent QB running back combination at Georgia Tech, and they play well off of one another. And Haynes King helps open up holes for Haynes because of his athleticism. And this is another one you have to really game plan. And shout out to Georgia Tech because you had Jahmyr Gibbs and now you have Haynes. Like they found ways to get these type of backs in their program. And so for me, this is why I like Georgia Tech as one of these dark horse teams in this conference. I'm not saying they're pound for pound better than Clemson, but man, when you have an elite level quarterback and running back, you're already ahead of the curve.
Let's get to a couple of offensive linemen, Emory. One from Miami, one from Clemson. The tackle from Clemson's Blake Miller. The tackle from Miami, Francis, and I'm not, I don't know if it's Myoga or something like that. I'm not sure. I know he was a really, really highly touted prospect, but I don't know exactly. I haven't done a Miami game, so I don't know how to pronounce his name.
Let's say Maui Goa, right? And and he's actually, I mean, I can see why people are expecting big things from Miami this year. They have a solid offensive line. Maui Goa is a guy that's going to be a first round pick. Fantastic tackle. You have a good running back in Mark Fletcher. So Carson Beck has stuff to work with. And then Blake Miller, I love his athleticism. He's able to get out and around on pulling plays or whatnot. He has good body lean. I think he does a good job of, playing the piano. We used to call it in college where you're passing guys off, picking up stunts and twists of that nature. So yeah, like offensive line play for both Clemson and Miami are going to be top notch. And both of these guys are going to be first round picks. Marigo, I think, will be a higher first round pick than Miller, but both would definitely go in the first 32, in my opinion.
So I had a chance to meet Blake Miller last year at the O-Line Masterminds event, right around this time of year, by the way. That's a physically impressive dude. Like, that's what an NFL offensive tackle looks like. Blake Miller, I mean, he certainly looks the part. Why don't we stay with the Clemson guys and go to the defensive side of the ball? Because it's funny, Emory, shortly after the NFL draft, 2025 NFL draft, we're looking at all of these different way too early or, premature mock drafts for 2026. Every one of them had 3 Clemson guys from defense, like in the top 10, top 20. TJ Parker at the end, Peter Woods at D tackle, and Avion Terrell at Clemson. Let's start with Parker, the D end, Emory, out of Clemson.
I mean, I guess we can go all the way back to the late great Gaines Adams. Like every year, it seems like there's a Clemson defensive end that we're talking about every season, and talking about it as a first round talent. Parker has good core strength, functional strength, speed to power, or whatever that everybody loves to say. But he's able to walk guys back, big offensive linemen back into the pocket and make the play. He also does a good job of just staying in the fight. Like if he can't get there with the initial move, he's going to stay with it and find a way to work himself into the quarterback. So I like his ability there. So I just think he's a solid defensive end. Peter Woods, what stood out to me about him, it was how versatile he is. He's a big body guy, but he also has the ability to be a 5 technique, you know what I'm saying, and rush the passer on the outside. And so you like his change of direction. He's always following where the football goes, and also does a good job of making plays in space and with regards to the point of attack where it's him and a ball carrier and he's able to hold his own and dance a little bit but still get the tackle, right? And so you have a guy that can play on the inside, that can help you out on the outside. So he's a scheme diverse guy. And Terrell, to me, reminds me a lot of Joe Hayden, click and close guy, able to really drive on the football, almost as like an extra jersey on a receiver with how tight the coverage is. So he is someone that he might be the best corner in the draft class when it's all said and done. But again, we're talking about another Clemson defender, whether it's a defensive lineman, whether it's a cornerback that we're talking about that's going to go high in the first round. Shout out to Dabo Sweeney, man, because again, he was ahead of the curve with it. He's not going to play this game that everybody else is playing in college football, but the constant recruiting and developing of talent, man, like he has been outstanding in that regard.
It's a really, really good point. How does Avion Terrell compare to his brother AJ with the Falcons, Emory?
AJ is a little bit taller, I feel like. So he gives you a little bit more, with the length and the ability to play press. But I think Terrell does a good job he's able to play press because he could press with his feet. You know what I'm saying? By, entertaining you at the line of scrimmage. But he could play off, and I think he has a better ability to drive on the football. His click and close is there's no wasted movement. Like, what I know the whole debate of the T-step and, just a plant and go, whatever is comfortable for you as a defensive back. But for him, it's just one fluid, boom, I'm out the break. I'm going to get the football. I'm driving on it. And he does a good job in tackling too in the open field. So that's the comparison to me. I think obviously this one is a little bit shorter, but I think his ability to play off and also press man is where he defers.
Emory, I know what you mean, but for the listeners or people watching us, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL, click and close. Explain that when you say click and close.
If you imagine yourself backpedaling, right? And now you're trying to go forward, that last step of the back pedal, you explode out of that. Kind of like what we saw a couple weeks ago with Tyrese Halliburton when he popped his Achilles, right?
Yeah, dude, that's so funny you said that. It's like the same mechanism as when the guys tear their Achilles.
And that's where people that rather T-step, have their argument and says, well, this helps prevent that because you're taking a wider step. You're not putting as much force on the Achilles to explode out. Again, whatever works for you, but a click and close guy is where he's backpedaling and he takes that last step back and just explodes out of it. And I think that aptly describes. So when you're imagining someone that, because it's more recent, when Tyrese Halliburton popped his Achilles, that's what the click looks like. The close is the acceleration, how fast you get to the receiver and try to close on the ball and or to make the tackle.
Speaking of DBs, what about Deuce Chestnut, the only guy from Syracuse? By the way, these are not in order. These are just 10 names that, guys that Emory wanted to break down. As you can tell, I've been kind of hopping around positions and schools and whatever. But you did have Deuce Chestnut, the safety from Syracuse, Emory, on your top 10 list.
Right, because again, this is a summer list because we just touched on Kyron Drones, quarterback from Virginia Tech, Jamari Taylor, the running back for Virginia. No one's talking about him because no one knows about him, but he came from North Carolina Central. He is a phenomenal tailback. Desmond Reed out of Pitt, the running back there. So there's a bunch of guys that we don't have enough time to talk about every prospect in the ACC. Chestnut is one of the better safeties in the country. I think he does a great job in not only playing closer to the line of scrimmage and being an active defender versus the run, but in coverage, if he's in a split safety look, he's making plays. He's able to drive on the ball. He secures a tackle. He's able to play through the hands of the receiver. So he has the fluidity to where he can kind of cover with these bigger wide receivers and some athletic tight ends, but also does a good job in tackling, helping out in run support.
Next week, Emory, we're going to dive into the Big Ten. Well, before we do that, who are some of the other guys you want to shout out in the ACC? You just did a couple of them.
Yeah, Jamari Taylor, listen, explosive tailback coming out of North Carolina Central, is one of the best players in the MEAC. And also his quarterback, Chandler Morris, who's now going to be a starting quarterback at Virginia, transfers in from North Texas. Virginia, dark horse team in the ACC.
Hold on a second. The same Chandler Morris that was at Louisiana, whatever, like 3 years ago?
No, that's Chandler Rogers. So there's a bunch of these Chandler, that play quarterback at North Texas.
I thought that was the same Chandler that has transferred to like 5 schools over the last 6 years. I'm like, there's no way that guy is still in college football.
But this one transferred a lot too, so we might be talking about 2 separate. I'm talking about the Chandler Rogers was at Cal, but was also at UL Monroe, and then was
that's the
okay.
one. I did UL Monroe against Army. Hey, listen, next week, Big Ten, there's some big time prospects. You think about Drew Aller from Penn State, Nick Singleton, Denai Dennis Sutton. Penn State's got a really good team. Ohio State lost a lot of guys, but they still have Caleb Downs. So check him out on social media at FBall Game Plan. I'm at Ross Tucker NFL. We're at Ross Tucker Pod. Make sure you subscribe, share, turn those notifications on. Makes it a lot easier. Other than that, the keg is kicked. We're all tapped out.
Thanks for tuning in to College Draft. Make sure to also check out the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, Even Money, and Fantasy Feast, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.